Hey friends, it's Becky here with Bountifully Blessed, and today we are going to be making some homemade tortillas. I found this recipe, decided to give it a quick little try because I was a little nervous, and I don't know why I haven't been making tortillas this entire time. They're so easy, they're so delicious, and they're literally with basic ingredients that you usually have in your house. So amazing. These are a flour tortilla, and they are so good. The recipe that I'm using makes roughly about 6 to 7 inches wide, or circumference rather, because obviously they're round, and they are bomb. So I wanted to share this recipe with you. Honestly, it's a very, very quick process. The longest part of the entire thing is just waiting for the glucose to really do its, the gluten to do its thing, and just letting them sit for long enough to let the glucose, I don't know why I keep saying glucose. Apparently I'm stuck on sugars, the gluten, to do its thing. So I originally let them sit for about 30 minutes, but they still didn't quite roll out to where they weren't constantly bouncing back to their original shape. So if you want to make sure that they're actually going to be rolled out nicely and keep the shape that you want them to, roughly about 6 to 7 inches, or bigger, obviously you can do bigger tortillas. You just won't have as many with this recipe. But I found at least 2 hours seem to be perfect. You even want to throw them in the fridge and let it sit overnight, you can do that too. So these are amazing. They're super, super bomb. So let's just share. It's made with 5 basic ingredients. You have your flour, you have your baking powder, you have salt, water, and an oil. You want a neutral oil. So since I do a lot of my actual baking and cooking with a standard oil, I have been using coconut oil. But coconut oil tends to have a coconutty flavor. So I'm going to be using a refined coconut oil. So that way it's neutral and my tortillas aren't going to taste like coconut. Although not that that would be a bad thing if you're making it for dessert. Coconut cream pie, just thinking out loud. Anyways, so I've got my couple basic ingredients and we are just going to make a dough. Super, super simple. And it's going to be nice and easy and absolutely delicious. Okay, so we are going to do 3 cups of flour. I'm actually going to double this recipe because I have some plans for them. So I'm going to do 6 cups of flour. I really need to get a bigger container for my flour. Fitting a 1 cup measure is just kind of obnoxious in this. So I tend to have to scoop it in. All right. Make more of a mess with flour than usual. All right. So like I said, we need 3 cups, or I'm going to double this recipe. So we're going to do 6. This is just kind of my overflow flour container. I have a really big thing of flour that I keep filled because flour is just one of those necessities. Basically, any kind of baking, you can expect to use lots of flour and lots of sugars. Almost always. All right. I'm not packing this. All right, so there's 3. I may have to go to my reserves in my pantry. 2. All right, I think we'll be all right. Looks like this probably just holds a little bit over 6 cups. Probably close to 7 cups. Beautiful. All right. So we've got 6 cups of flour. we are going to need 1 teaspoon normally of baking powder. But obviously we need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I'm going to keep saying powder because baking soda and baking powder get very easily confused. We're going to want 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of salt. There's 1 and about a half. Perfect. Salt is one of those things you don't want to overdo, but you also want to make sure you got enough. All right. And then 1/3 cup of oil. Like I said, I am using a liquid refined coconut oil. Whatever kind of oil you use, just make sure that it is a neutral oil. That is extremely important. Okay. I'm just going to give our dry ingredients a little bit of a mix here. And then I'm going to kind of create a little bit of a hole. Like if I were doing a batter or anything like that, usually like you're going to put an egg or something, you kind of create a little bit of a hole for it. I'm going to do the same thing here because we're going to be adding quite a bit of oil and water. So I want 1/3 cup of water, or I'm sorry, 1/3 cup of oil. So we actually want 2/3. And make sure that it's with a liquid measuring cup. Okay, so 2/3. Gonna seem like so much oil. Because again, we're doubling the recipe. All right, so 2/3 of oil, and then we want 2 cups of warm water. Make sure you use a liquid measuring cup. All right, beautiful. And then we're just going to mix this together. Let me get my wonderful Danish whisk here. I love this thing. And of course, we're just going to mix this together until it makes a dough. We're going to knead it for about 2 to 3 minutes once it is fully combined. And then we're going to separate it into 32 sections because the original recipe is for 16 tortillas. I'm doubling it because we've got plans, and tortillas are always nice to have around. They really, really are. I did not realize how much I liked having them around until I haven't had them or I couldn't eat them because I'm having to be dairy and soy free, and I am just baffled at just the soy. Soy is in everything. It's been really eye-opening to me. So it's really encouraged me to have to make a lot more from scratch, which I've wanted to do anyways, but it has been really hard. But at the end of the day, I want to do what's the best for me and what's going to be best for my daughter. And I'm no quitter. All right. So now that that's well combined, I'm actually just going to knead this. Like I said, for good, probably 2 to 3 minutes or so. But now that it's nice and well combined, it's just, oh, it's so beautiful. So we're just going to knead this. All right, now that I've got my dough, I've got that all nice and kneaded here for the last 2 or so minutes. I'm going to actually flour this surface here, and we are just going to do our best to try and make these into as equivalent sections as possible. I'm going to give this just a little bit more love here. And then I'm going to try my best to get these into about 32 equal sections as best as I can. Dough is so fun to play with. I could just play with it all day. Maybe that's why Play-Doh exists. Well, that is why Play-Doh exists, not maybe. All right. So what I'm going to do is, since I know roughly, cutting it in half is going to be easiest first. So let's make sure that our dough is roughly, we can find the center. Cutting in half is always easier. Let's deal with half of it at a time here. All right, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to do basically 16 sections, roughly. So what I like to do when I do this, to try and create as equal sections as possible, I'm going to cut it into fourths first. All right. Kind of create a little bit of a circle here. I'm going to cut it into fourths. I'm going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to do half again. And then each one of these will need to be cut into 4 sections. Okay. So basically we're just working with fourths. That's the easiest way I have found to do that mathematically and not mess with my brain too much. So again, cut those into fourths, and roughly we'll have equal parts. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly perfect, but you know, when you're making things homemade, the goal is to do your best. We're not looking for perfection here. It's okay if your tortillas are not exactly all the same thickness. I mean, let's be honest. To me, that's kind of the fun part, is because you get to really see the uniqueness that comes from it. And I just find that fun personally. But maybe that's not your style. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got 16 sections. We're going to do the same thing with the other dough. And then what I'm going to do, in order to be able to allow these to rise properly, I'm just going to leave them kind of in like little discs. And then we are actually just going to put them in the bowl that we did them in here. And then we're going to cover these and let them basically settle. We're going to let them rest for, like I said, I think, honestly, I think that the 2-hour mark seemed to work best for me to really allow that gluten to really do its job. But obviously that's going to be personal preference. But I definitely felt like that was kind of the perfect amount for me personally. So I'm just going to kind of let them go into discs. You can honestly put them in balls. If you're going to do them for about 2 hours, I think a little bit thicker is better so that they don't dry out at all on the tops. But I'm just going to let these sit. We're going to get these all rolled up. Okay, So I've had these sitting now for a little over 2 hours. I ended up realizing that I'd made a mistake. So I checked on them in about an hour, only to realize that I had only put 5 cups of flour instead of 6. So they were super, super oily. And I was like, something's wrong. And I realized that I had only put 5 cups of flour. So I went back, reincorporated that, and now I've let them sit. So we're gonna see if they're ready. They've just got these nice little balls. As you can see, I've had a towel wrapped around them now. And we are just gonna actually roll these out and see if the gluten has had enough time to really do its thing here. So just make sure you flour your surface, because obviously they're gonna be kind of sticky. Beautiful. All right, so like I said, there's 32 of these on my end. Okay, so I want to get a tortilla press at some point. I do not have one at the moment. So I'm just gonna go with the old-fashioned way. And we're just gonna roll these guys out. And roughly about 6 to 7 inches each, till they're kind of thin enough to where like you hold them up to the light and they have a little bit of, they're a little see-through, is the best way to describe them. And each one is going to have its own character, which I absolutely love. It's kind of the fun part to me, is the little bit of character that each one will have when you hand roll them out. Beautiful. Okay, so these have definitely set plenty long, which is great. As you can see, it's holding its shape beautifully. It's not like bouncing back, which is what we want. We want it to hold its shape and not just bounce back immediately. So like I said, just check on them, good 2 hours or so. Definitely seems to be the way to go. Okay, so once you've got your tortillas rolled out to about 6 to 7 inches, if you're doing the full 16 from the batch, once you have each one laid out properly, all you have to do to get them to be ready to go is get yourself a pan. You're gonna warm up a little bit of oil, whatever your oil of preference is, in the pan. Heat it up on medium, and then you're just gonna cook the edges, or sides rather, each side for about 45 seconds. And then that's it. It's really that simple. It's quite fabulous. So you'll go from like this classic doughiness, and I'll show you what it looks like when we cook it here. All right, so you're gonna turn your stove to medium, put a little bit of oil. I'm gonna use my cast iron here. Just swirl that around here. We're gonna let that come up to temperature. All right, now that our pan is ready, we're gonna take that beautiful tortilla and we're just gonna put it on the one side for about 45 seconds, and then we're gonna flip it, and we will have a perfect tortilla ready to eat. I like to look for these little bubbles that you can see to know that I'm getting ready to flip it. So obviously 45 seconds isn't necessarily an exact science. It's gonna also depend on, you know, your pan, temperature and all that. And now that I've got those little bubbles, look at how beautiful. That kind of gives me a heads up that they're looking good. And now this is not quite as like soft and doughy. Now it's actually got that texture that we want, that's a tortilla. This is what I like to look for as well, just slight browning on those bubbles. That gives me a better idea that it's actually cooked the way I want as well. So So cook them as much as you want. Make sure that they look the way that you want, and you're good to go. Beautiful. That is what I like to see. That looks perfect. Okay, so now we have one beautiful tortilla. It's nice and toasty. It's nice and hot. Look at how beautiful that is. Doesn't that look so gorgeous? And it feels so good. Nice and sturdy for your beautiful tacos or your enchiladas or quesadillas or whatever it is that you like to make your tortillas for. So I absolutely love these. Like I said, these are fairly small. If you like bigger ones, depending on what your size preference is. We made some taquitos or rolled tacos with these. They're perfect for like a nice sized taco without it being like really big. I think they're still perfect for burrito. You're looking at a little bit of a smaller burrito, but that's okay. But yeah, this is such an easy process. Like I said, the longest part is just waiting to let them settle and sit for about that 2-hour time frame to make sure that the gluten really does its work so that you can properly spread out the dough. That's really all it is. Everything else is literally just mixing, kneading, and then you're good to go. It's wonderful. So that's why I like to make a big batch of them. So that way I can just have them ready to go. You can either put, the dough in your freezer or your fridge. And then when you want to actually make some, instead of pre-cooking them all, then you can just grab out the dough, roll it out. It is going to be a little bit colder, so give it a little bit of time to come to room temperature, and you're good to go. It's great. I love it. I'm so glad that I have started making tortillas, and it's amazing to me how many things we buy from the store that are totally unnecessary. And me having to avoid soy and dairy, I've really come to realize how much soy is in what seems like everything. So it's a huge blessing to be able to do these things for myself. And now I can just make them part of my regular routine and in my rotation, just like I do my regular beef stock and chicken stock and bread and all those things. Just kind of start adding them to my routines so that way I can just regularly get those things done, which feels incredible. So I hope that this encourages you to make your own tortillas, because it's really easy and they're absolutely delicious. My husband can't wait to make some chips with these as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I pray that you are bountifully blessed. Till next time. Bye, friends.